I still remember that night. The sound of her heels on the wet pavement, the shimmer of rain on her black coat, and the way she opened the passenger door of my car without saying a word. She just sat down, exhaled, and whispered, "I like you and I think you like me, too." For a second, I thought I was imagining it. My CEO, Eleanor Reed, was sitting beside me, her perfume soft and expensive, her voice trembling like she'd said something forbidden. I didn't know what to do. I just nodded. That's how it started. The strangest night of my life. I was 23, barely a year into my first corporate job, and I already felt like an imposter. The youngest assistant in a company full of people who measured worth in confidence and watches. Eleanor was everything I wasn't. Composed, powerful, the kind of woman who didn't just walk into a room. She owned it. And that night she looked nothing like the woman I saw in board meetings. Her eyes were tired, vulnerable. "Drive anywhere," she said softly. "Just not home." The city was soaked in rain. Traffic lights reflecting on the windshield like fading memories. I didn't ask questions. I just drove past the office district, past the river until the buildings turned into quiet streets and all we could hear was the rain. She rolled down the window, let the wind in, and for the first time smiled. "You ever get tired of pretending?" she asked. I glanced at her. "All the time," I said. She nodded slowly as if she understood exactly what I meant. For a while we didn't speak. Just two strangers pretending not to be lonely. When I stopped the car near the Hudson, she leaned back, looking out at the water. "Do you know what it's like?" she said quietly. "To have everything people dream of and still feel empty." I didn't. But I didn't say that. Instead, I said, "I think I do." She turned to me, searching my face for something. "Honesty, maybe, or danger." "You shouldn't," she whispered. "You're too young to understand." There was no arrogance in her tone, only sadness. That kind of sadness you hear in people who once loved deeply and lost more than they were ready to lose. I wanted to ask what happened, but she closed her eyes, cutting the question short. "Forget this," she murmured after a while. "Tomorrow we'll pretend it never happened." I wanted to agree, but the truth was I couldn't because in that short drive, something shifted inside me. Not infatuation, not lust, something quieter, like my world, which had been running in gray tones, suddenly found a hint of color. When I dropped her off near her apartment, she didn't say goodbye, just opened the door, paused for a heartbeat, and said, "You're not like the others, Lucas." And then she was gone. I sat there for a long time, engine running, trying to understand what had just happened. The city was asleep, but I couldn't shake the sound of her voice. "I like you and I think you like me, too." She wasn't wrong. The next morning, I walked into the office early, hoping to act normal. But when she entered the elevator, calm, perfect, unreadable, she didn't look at me once. Still, when our shoulders brushed as we stepped out, I saw it just for a second. A flicker in her eyes like lightning behind glass. That's when I knew we both remembered everything. By morning, the city had dried into a hard shine. Sun on glass, coffee lines, shoes clicking toward money. I told myself the night was a fever dream. When the elevator doors opened on 32, Eleanor was already there. A crimson blouse under a charcoal blazer, her hair caught in a quiet knot. She didn't glance at me, not once. If anything, the air around her seemed colder, like she had willed last night into a sealed room with no handle. Meetings stacked like dominoes. I carried binders, printed decks, answered questions before they were asked. The rhythm kept my hands busy and my head noisy. Still, whenever her voice cut across the room, I felt it. An ache behind the ribs, the memory of rain and her whisper. At 10 o'clock during a product review, our eyes nearly met. Nearly. She pivoted to the whiteboard before contact, as if eye contact itself was a risk she couldn't afford. Sophie Clark rolled her chair to my desk at lunch, peeling an orange like a tiny sun. "You look like you slept in a train station," she said. Friendly, not unkind. "Everything okay?" "Deadlines?" I lied. "Sure," she said, considering me. "Also, word is you're becoming the favorite. Watch your back. This floor doesn't like favorites." Before I could answer, Nathan Cole slid by. Perfect hair, perfect smirk. Paper cup labeled N. "Hey, rookie," he said as if the nickname were a handshake. "Eleanor wants you in the boardroom at 1 alone." He held my gaze an extra second as if he were measuring me for a box. Congrats. The boardroom was a glass aquarium over the city. I stood by the end chair, heart doing its offbeat drum. When Eleanor entered, she closed the door slowly, though everyone could still see us through the glass. She didn't sit. She placed a folder on the table and spoke to the skyline. "If you want to survive here," she said, voice even, "never look at me that way again." It wasn't cruelty. It was surgery, precise, necessary, bloodless. I nodded. My mouth was dry. "We're going to handle the Westport account together," she continued. "You'll liaise with finance and brand. You'll be good at it, but no one can ever think you're good at it because of me. Understood?" "Yes." She opened the folder, revealed timelines. No mention of last night. A world rebuilt in policy and bullet points. I took the notes like a good soldier and left before the ache could show on my face. The day grew barbed. Small things snagged. Emails accidentally excluding me. Calendar invites that moved without explanation. A slide deck I built suddenly attached to Nathan Cole's name. He shrugged when I brought it up. "Mistakes happen," he said, polished as a showroom car. "Keep up." By 4 o'clock, the Whisper network had warmed. A laugh would die when I entered. Glances slid off me like oil. Sophie Clark messaged. "Ignore them. Finish Westport. Eleanor trusts you. Rare air up here." I typed thanks, then deleted it. Better to say nothing. At 6, the floor emptied into the amber hush of overtime. A thunderhead smudged the horizon. The kind that steals light early. I stayed late, chasing numbers until they balanced. When I finally shut down my screen, the building felt underwater. Long corridors, exit signs glowing like distant fish. The parking deck smelled of concrete and rain beginning again. I hit unlock. My car chirped. That's when I saw her sedan. 2 rows over a dark shape with its interior light off. Something, call it instinct or last night's echo, pulled me closer. She was there, hands fixed at 10 and 2 on a motionless steering wheel, forehead tilted toward the leather, not sobbing, crying the way strong people cry, quietly with discipline, as if the tears were a tax she paid in private for the privilege of being still in public. I stopped a few feet away, unsure of the border between concern and intrusion. She saw me in the mirror before I could decide. For a heartbeat, she didn't wipe her cheeks. She let me see. Then she composed herself with a single breath and pressed the window button halfway. "Wrong level," she said. Voice roughened but steady. "Executive parking is 1 floor up." "I know," I answered. "My car's here." Silence opened between us, soft, dangerous. Rain started first as a tremble, then as a thin curtain. I could have left. I should have. Instead, I stood there, soaked in the sound of it. "Lucas," she said, using my name like a fragile object. "Go home." I nodded, but my feet didn't move. She closed her eyes, and when she opened them, the steel was back. The window slid up. The engine turned over. Her tail lights burned a muted red through the rain as she pulled out, paused at the ramp, and hesitated. 1 second, 2, like a dancer waiting for a cue that didn't come. Then she was gone, and the deck felt suddenly enormous. Every echo of my footsteps, a question I couldn't answer. 3 days passed before I saw her again outside of meetings. 3 long, quiet days where I pretended the office lights didn't dim when she walked by. I buried myself in the Westport project. Spreadsheets, branding reports, late nights that blurred into mornings. Everyone said I was focused. The truth was simpler. I didn't know what else to do with the ache. On Thursday night, I was leaving after 10 o'clock when I saw her car again. Same level, same spot, engine off. The rain hadn't started yet, but the air carried that heavy smell of a storm about to break. I stood there for a moment arguing with myself, then walked over and knocked gently on the window. She didn't look surprised, just tired, like she'd been expecting me. The window slid down halfway. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "Neither should you," I answered. That made her smile barely. Get in. We drove with no destination. The city stretched ahead, lit and endless, our reflections flickering in the glass. I asked if she wanted to talk about work. She shook her head. Not tonight. I'm tired of being someone's boss. Her voice was soft, almost human in a way I hadn't heard before. We stopped at a small diner near the river, the kind that never closes and never judges. Inside, the booths were cracked red leather. The coffee burnt but warm. She ordered tea. I ordered whatever passed for dinner. For a while, we just sat there watching the rain start to fall outside. You think I'm heartless, she said suddenly. Everyone does. I don't, I replied. I think you're careful. She looked at me then. Truly looked like she wanted to argue but couldn't find a reason to. My husband used to say that, she whispered. Before the accident. She paused, tracing a finger along the rim of her cup. He died 5 years ago. Drunk driver. It was a Saturday. We were supposed to go to dinner, but I stayed late at work. He left without me. The words hung between us like smoke. I didn't speak. There was nothing to say that wouldn't sound empty. After a while, she continued. Since then, I learned to live in plans and numbers. They don't leave you. They don't die. And people, I asked quietly. People always leave, she said, and smiled in that sad practiced way people do when they've convinced themselves it's true. Outside, thunder cracked over the river. The sound shook the windows. She flinched, then laughed softly. I hate storms. Why? Because they remind me how little control we have. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy, full of the things neither of us dared to admit. When the rain softened, I drove her home. As I pulled up to her building, she said, Lucas, this doesn't happen again. Okay, I said. But when she turned to leave, she stopped halfway, one hand on the door. You make me forget, she whispered, and that scares me. Then she got out and walked into the rain without looking back. I watched her until she disappeared through the revolving doors. I should have driven off, but I sat there replaying her voice, her face under the streetlight, the way she said, forget. I didn't realize someone else was watching. Across the street under a black umbrella, Nathan Cole stood smoking, his eyes following her, then me. When our gazes met, he smiled. Not the friendly kind, the kind that meant trouble. That night, my phone buzzed with a message from Sophie Clark. Be careful. Rumors are starting. I didn't reply because she was right and because I already knew something was coming. The next morning, whispers followed me like shadows. I could feel them behind my back, brushing against the air whenever I passed a hallway. People stopped pretending to type when I walked by. A few smiled too kindly, the kind of smile that says they already know something you wish they didn't. Nathan Cole was the loudest silence of all. He didn't need to say a word. The smirk on his face did the talking. By noon, he'd already claimed credit for my presentation slides in the Westport proposal. When I confronted him, he just leaned back in his chair. Relax, rookie. We're all on the same team. I wanted to hit him. Instead, I walked away. I knew what he was doing. He'd seen us that night. Eleanor kept her distance. Her door was open for everyone except me. She spoke to me only through emails. Short, precise, stripped of warmth. Still, every time I caught her reflection in the glass, I saw hesitation, like she wanted to say something and swallowed it back at the last second. That Friday, I stayed late again. The office was empty, just the hum of air conditioning and the glow of the skyline. I was reviewing reports when her voice cut through the silence. You shouldn't be here. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, red blouse catching the faint light. I smiled weakly. Neither should you. She hesitated, then walked in. Nathan Cole's been talking, she said. They think there's something between us. There isn't. I lied. Her eyes softened, then stopped looking at me like there is. I didn't answer. She sighed, rubbed her temples, then sat on the edge of my desk. You're too honest for this place, Lucas. That's your strength and your weakness. I looked up at her. And what about you? You hide everything until it breaks. That made her laugh quietly. You have no idea how right you are. The laugh faded into silence. For a moment, it felt like the city disappeared, leaving only us and the quiet hum of electricity. Why did you defend me? I asked at the board meeting. You risked everything. Her eyes found mine. Because you didn't deserve what they were doing. And because, she stopped herself, searching for safer words. Because you remind me of who I used to be. Thunder rumbled outside, low and distant. She turned toward the window. It's always raining when I make bad decisions, she said softly. Then, as if pulled by something neither of us could control, she reached out. Her hand brushed mine just once, but long enough to burn it into memory. You make me feel alive again, she whispered. The room froze. The storm outside broke open. Heavy rain tapping against the glass. She didn't move her hand away, and neither did I. There was nothing bold, nothing reckless about it. Just two people standing too close to the truth. Then came the flash. A sharp white light from the hallway window. She gasped, stepping back. What was that? I turned toward the glass, but whoever it was, whoever had the camera was gone. Her expression hardened instantly. They'll twist this. You need to go home now. Eleanor, now. Her tone left no room for argument. I gathered my things and left. My hands shook the whole way to the elevator. When the doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of her standing there, framed by the lightning. She looked like someone preparing to lose everything with grace. That night I couldn't sleep. My phone buzzed at 1:14 a.m. An anonymous message. Nice moment you two had. Wonder what the board will say. I stared at it for a long time, feeling something cold settle in my chest. The message wasn't signed, but I didn't need a name. Nathan Cole had finally made his move. The next morning, an email from HR waited in my inbox. Please meet with Ms. Reed and the executive board at 3:00 p.m. I closed my laptop and whispered to myself, it's over. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. The meeting room felt colder than usual. The kind of cold that had nothing to do with air conditioning. Eleanor sat at the head of the table, still and calm. Her hands folded neatly on a stack of papers. The rest of the board looked like a jury waiting to deliver a verdict. Nathan Cole leaned against the glass wall, pretending not to enjoy the show. I took the only empty seat and waited for the world to fall apart. The head of HR cleared her throat. Mr. Bennett, there have been concerns regarding inappropriate conduct and potential favoritism. She didn't have to say more. The photo was already printed. Eleanor's hand brushing mine under the office light. Out of context, it looked like proof. Eleanor reached for the photo, studied it, then looked at me. Her voice was steady. This meeting is unnecessary. I've already submitted my resignation. The room went silent. Ms. Reed, the HR director, started, but Eleanor cut her off. If my leadership is in question, I won't be the reason this company loses credibility. I take full responsibility. Every word was a blade sharp, precise, and final. I wanted to speak, to tell them the truth, that she hadn't done anything wrong, that she was protecting me. But she didn't let me. Her eyes met mine. A silent warning. Don't. After the meeting, I chased her down the corridor. Why did you do that? I demanded. She stopped by the elevator, her reflection trembling in the glass. Because if I didn't, they would have destroyed you. You're young, Lucas. You still have a future here. And you, she smiled faintly. I've already lived through worse. The elevator opened. She stepped in, pressed the button, and before the doors closed, she whispered, "Don't follow me." But I did. Later that evening, I found her at the same cafe by the river, the one from that first night. She was sitting by the window, watching the rain blur the city into watercolor. No blazer, no armor, just a woman who finally stopped pretending. "You shouldn't be here," she said when I sat across from her. "Neither should you," I answered. That earned a quiet laugh. "You never listen." I learned from the best. For a while, neither of us spoke. The waitress refilled her tea. Mine went untouched. Outside, the rain softened into mist. Finally, I said, "You didn't deserve this." She looked at me, and for once, there was no wall between us. "Lucas, life isn't about what we deserve. It's about what we can carry." "Then let me carry part of it." Her eyes glistened. You already are. She reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine one last time. You should lead your own story now. I shook my head only because you taught me how. She smiled, stood up, and put on her coat. Maybe one day when we're both different people, we'll meet again. Would you want that? I asked. She hesitated at the door. I don't know, she said softly, but I'll think about it every time it rains. Then she was gone, swallowed by the gray evening. I stayed in the cafe until the lights dimmed, replaying her words like a melody that wouldn't end. Outside, the city breathed, 1,000 stories unfolding at once. Mine had changed shape, and so had I. In the weeks that followed, Nathan Cole's rumors faded. HR moved on. The company filled her office with someone younger, louder, less graceful. But every time it rained, I'd find myself looking at that window, expecting to see her reflection. I never did. One night, months later, I drove back to the river. The same spot where she'd first said, "Drive anywhere, just not home." The city glowed in the distance, the air thick with memory. I rolled down the window, felt the cool wind, and smiled. Maybe love isn't meant to last forever. Maybe it's just meant to change us, to leave something behind that keeps us human. I started the engine and whispered to the empty seat beside me, "Thank you, Eleanor." Then I drove away into the rain toward whatever waited.